The editor, William Arquette. Valletta, Malta, June 22, the year of our Lord, 1863. I finally reached the end of the journey. I clearly remember thinking to myself as I looked at the tattered map in my hand and saw that indeed I was in the Cave of Dol, a hidden cave in Nubia described by the British explorer Sir Gordon Harper, 1763-18. His map indicated that it was 58 Roman miles from to the west of the Nile at the place where it forks in two, near the city of Khartoum. What the map didn't show, however, were the mist and the fragments of rainbow bridging the delicate distance between white light and transparency, also bridging me to my destination, creating an opening to my destination by arriving to me like a melted compass telling me I'm close. The map got me far, but I needed at that point and even now, another guide, something more than lines, even something more than a description. Thank the Lord that Sir Gordon left a diary of his journey called the Book of Problems, a haphazard account that doesn't always line up with the map as he usually wanders off of the lines, lost, in unknown territory even if he thinks he knows where he is, or better yet, can find his way out of the mess. To make matters worse, most of the stories happen at night where he wakes up full of adrenaline after what he heard or who he felt, first as a tremor of fear. As a side note, is it true what Solomon says that this is the beginning of wisdom? If this fear is the beginning of wisdom, could it also be the beginning of love, which is the fullness and height of wisdom, the who that solves the fear? In fact, Sir Gordon seems to be chasing love the entire time, even in the name of exploration, science, archaeology, or that lost art, cartography, and this seemingly leads him in the opposite direction of both his destination, classical logic, and his job as a cartographer, making him trapped in place in intractable situations. At one point he proposed to marry an indigenous woman, Princess Amaros equals Rainbow, going against the King Eazab equals Joseph, who told her and him no. Sir Gordon found himself learning an entirely foreign language, Nubian, without any book, just eye contact and gestures. He did all of this just for her, but also with the determination to convince the tribe that he loves her. He didn't know that the king already knew his love was genuine, transcending all accidents, striking at the heart. Sir Gordon, I intuit, had a gentle and gracefully strong air about him, carried in his words, especially in the follow-through as seen literally in his penmanship and writing style. Yet the king still said no at the beginning, middle, and end, the follow-through, to Gordon's great confusion, only fueling his resolve. You, my current reader, may be wondering why I am bothering to recount the epically disastrous love story of Sir Gordon now. There's a point other than the simple fact that it fueled his entire journey like an unquenchable flame from start to finish and after. There's a small point that is as subtle as the simplicity is strong. With the language that he learned, that language of love, he was able to translate the spiritual breath into words, failing equally as miserably as in his search to manifest love. He was also able to translate a book, the book which is in your hands, or Acacia, written in the ancient Nubian tongue, into English. This book of reflections, or in English Acacia, was catalogued in the library of Alexandria as a Greek genre called Kreia. It's not documented, at least not by Sir Gordon, if there existed at one point a Greek translation from the original Nubian. In any case, before the library of Alexandria was burned in 48 BC, the original was kept in a special area in a glass vacuum seal, and the librarian's assistant Gregorius Esmeraldus risked his life to break into the heart of the library to save it along with 6 other sealed books. Sir Gordon found one, in Nubia. His theory, recounted in the Book of Problems, is that Gregorius wanted to bring the books back to their original homes for the sake of rigorously preserving knowledge with the hope that their contents could be made living again. He hid the books, and after that his fate is uncertain. Sir Gordon, familiar with the old legend, found the original Nubian papyrus scroll in a cave by accident, though his intention was simply to be a cartographer and also hide to save his life. With his knowledge of the legend of the 7 lost books of Alexandria together with his new knowledge of the language, he strongly intuited at the level of his heart that he found the original. He then had to exercise his twofold ability to translate the spirit to words, and to translate the Nubian text to his own language, English, the former to capture the spirit of the book and the latter to render clear the meaning of individual words, relating them to what is familiar to him. He spent 3 weeks translating the text into English, and upon finishing he scribbled in his diary, the Book of Problems, the journey has once again ended in an epic failure. Everything good that comes from this book comes from pieces of truth breaking through like sound reverberating so much that it shatters glass. Everything bad that doesn't make sense comes from me. Sir Gordon writes in his Book of Problems that the hardest part about translating this book is finding the space, not just physical space, but an interior space without the distractions of light but especially sound. We do not know which comes first, thinking or listening. In reality they are already collapsed as orixis as a desire to know, to live, and to love, sparking thought and listening as if in a misfiring first moment, which is perhaps why thoughts frequently misfire and listening often doesn't endure more than a few moments. The one of the orixis is not blind. Seemingly, it splits into two eyes, listening and thinking, but this will lead us to an intractable contradiction. The two eyes, listening and thinking, have a soul behind it. In fact, the orixis moves as three moments: listening, thought, and the reflexive moment where thought is aware of the listening and the need to move beyond, allowing the orixis to breathe in and then continue to exhale its blue flame. It is a movement flowing as a reflection of the original orixis, which has in its internal structure an infinite desire for life, for love, and for desire itself. Orixis of life explains why we have emotions seemingly in the middle of listening and thought, oscillating between the two, in the heart, passively and actively, but really passion and action collapsed in one moment, pushing us to feel more life, love, and desire, squared. The orixis of life, the need, the want, and the desire, evidently led Sir Gordon to stay in the cave of Dol for 3 weeks in order to hide from the dangers of the world and the jungle, to translate the book in secret, to listen and to think and to listen because of his desire to live and then to thrive. As an outside observer, it strikes me as a providential moment of grace. Why did he pick that cave of all to hide in? There is a little stream from the Nile branching off, making the desert full of life. It is one of the most beautiful places on earth, with the local desert date trees growing, the Gundala Agaundina. Besides eating the fruit, you can tap the tree for sap and then boil it down, you can eat the leaves when the tree is young, and you can even eat the flowers and seeds among other uses. Again, I suspect it was Sir Gordon's sense of beauty rather than utility that led him into hiding in the first place, a beauty you could even taste and live on. He knew that staying in the city would make him frustrated with life, would frustrate his orixis. He needed and wanted to purify himself with the flowing river. As he dived into the river and let it carry him, the act allowed him to stay firm while traveling with the running flow, just like the movement of tree roots themselves, so that he could drink and be fertile, ever growing into a new river. That same sense of beauty caused him to stop his flow and flower there, producing a river of life of his own in the form of fruit like the pomegranate tree. What about his lover, you may ask? His love was contradicted by life. People always assume that it's love that outlasts the contradiction. However, when all of his love was contradicted, the only option left was to go forward, to continue living. In reality, now it becomes a choice to live and a choice to love, a need and a want to do both, to recreate both as one, forge them together. It was that last exhale of the orixis of life, that desire, that led him to see at once the cave's beauty and to choose it, to create a life there and hope that his lover will escape her contradiction and choose the same path, discovering the place of beauty. Of course he left her signs in secret. He would leave footprints in the mud if the king ever let her collect dates from that area. My theory is that Sir Gordon's deep sense of beauty is what led him to be a cartographer and explorer in the first place. That sense of beauty was his compass and his drive, leading him far and wide while also deeper. He found in a way the lost Garden of Eden, separated from the world. That sense of beauty harmoniously lined up with the librarian assistant Gregorius. Gregorius knew what he was looking for in advance but went from the known world of books into the unknown, whereas Sir Gordon didn't know what he was looking for, guided by that which was most familiar to him, beauty. He found his destination by accident. After all, somebody after 1800 years had to have their eyes open wide enough and deep enough to recognize what Gregorius recognized, one of the most beautiful places on earth. It was more than an English sense of beauty in my opinion, but a beauty that is universal, transcending time, place and culture. It is the same force that pulled me to seek it, knowing like Gregorius but desiring like Sir Gordon to go there myself. It doesn't matter that I happen to be an Englishman like Sir Gordon. It's a desire for beauty that perhaps will entangle you too, my reader. After all, my own journey started by reading the Book of Problems by Sir Gordon at the Malta National Library. The Search for Love and Truth accidentally created the Book of Problems. That book furthermore includes the search for the lost books of Alexandria, increasingly more aware of the search and the truth. In fact, there are so many layers of texts involved in my own writing as there is Acacia, the translation by Sir Gordon, his diary, my account of his diary, my personal adventure that I'm documenting in real time. It is as if the world is composed of books and we are all books interconnected with each other, reading and writing, listening and speaking, with one desire giving meaning that we all share, for beauty and in beauty, deepening that beauty as we go deep. He describes in his Book of Problems that he climbed on top of the cave to watch the sunset. The day was July 3rd in the year of our Lord, 1813. He went inside the dark opening of the rock formation to find a cave shaped like a room with a smooth sandstone floor. The waxing crescent moon was only 1/3 full, but its light was heavier, being surrounded by total darkness, the darkness of the moon itself, outside, and on the earth. Sir Gordon could see around into the darkness as if he had a subtle lamp. Without exploring he felt safe, and so he slept deeply right away as if he found his home. However, he woke up when the night was even blacker, making the moon more invisibly penetrating, even into his own cold bones. The light shone from one moon to the next. That's when he found his home and knew it in his bones. Deep in the heart of night, the moon rays penetrated the dust and the darkness itself to vanish mysteriously into the corner. In the corner of his eye, he saw something that didn't reflect the moon. He got up to investigate, to continue past the corner, could not rely on his eyes anymore, but instead felt his way slowly and listened to his hands gracefully feel the moist cavern walls, the nearly inaudible sound of his passion, working secretly with the oryxis inside of him and mingling slowly with inspiration. Love dances in the night and is brought to life from the dark nothingness, newly created. Sir Gordon knew the search was no longer in his power to control. In fact, if he continued walking beyond the corner where the light stopped, he would risk his life. At that very moment, he also became confused. He writes in his desire in his diary, "It's as if the oryxis of life was leading me into a contradiction. I wanted to and needed to continue to live but couldn't. Meanwhile behind me, where I have the moonlight, I am safe but simply won't have that love, the new life, that desire itself that I seek in love, creating love. Indeed, I would be empty, in a way lifeless without love. Yet that is my only logical option. Perhaps I will pause for the night, die to myself, dream of love from a distance, and take up the search again tomorrow morning, picking up the pieces of broken dreams." I thought to myself, is this the place where dreams are born and come to life? The Book of Problems continues that right when he gave up in favor of that classical logic, he saw something. Actually, he saw an absence, a dark hole, darker even than the environment. He took 2 steps to reach it and almost fell as his foot lightly kicked it. He felt the edges and grasped that it was rectangular. As the texture was smoother and colder than the black night, he intuited that it was a marble box. He recognized the marble texture from the Nubian mines. He wanted to drag it into the moonlight but didn't want to damage it, so his love and grace finally did lead him to give up the search and try again in the morning, but not without mapping out first with his mind, hands, and feet the raw where and when. In the morning, he will uncover the what and eventually the who with his heart. After 3 hours of meticulously mapping the cave into the palms of his hands, Sir Gordon made his way back to the mouth of the cave. He reflected to himself before sleeping, what is the box and who put it there as if to hide it? Why, I'll take this pause, this breath, in the Book of Problems to pause myself, to reflect. My reader may be wondering about how I enter the story. Well, I first discovered the original manuscript of the Book of Problems by accident as I was doing research on my Aristotelian thesis in the Malta National Library. There is a book attributed to Aristotle by the name, Problems, Greek, Problemata, Latin, Problemata. I suspect on an instinctual level that it was not Aristotle, yet I still like to keep an open mind about the matter as I don't have any evidence one way or the other. I accidentally opened an analogous use of the word accident, meaning here by means of curiosity rather than by chance, the Book of Problems by Sir Gordon, thinking it would be about Aristotle, and it unexpectedly absorbed me so much that I almost abandoned my thesis. The Maltese librarian told me that the book was found by merchants in southern Egypt in 1841 and then brought to Malta. The merchants simply needed to unload their ships to continue along their journey. It was not reproduced. The Maltese have the only copy, and so I was the one who began copying. Eventually I will send it to the printers. The problem is that Book of Problems is highly charged because it carries traces of the map for the next lost book. At this point in time those traces are the most important part of his cartography and what needs to be kept secret. 6 of these books to this day are still hidden. I am currently in Malta as I write this story. I have the first lost book of Alexandria in my hand along with the translation by Sir Gordon. I myself barely made it back alive. I suspect that the second book is hiding in Timbuktu. At the moment I will not write more details as the search is ongoing. Instead of focusing on my journey now, let's return to the sequence of events as accounted by Sir Gordon. There was a light rain early, but the sunrise still managed to break through the clouds. Sir Gordon had an sheet blanket, but sometimes he used it as a mattress rather than a cover. The nights without a cover could be chilly, but there was something about the fresh air that kept his blood and brain awake during the sleep. That way he could live the night, the darkness, and the dream rather than forget about both the dream and the day. He also remembered his past mistakes, for example getting lost in the mountains of northern Africa with nothing and surviving. He could feel the scars of those mistakes not on his skin, but in his blood. He remembered his love and passion that persevered. He liked to wake up with his courage fully formed by his dreams and with the clear choice before his mind, like lights breaking through his eyes, a yes or no, to live or to continue sleeping, to repair the broken love in the village or let the night's fear continue its grip, to be strong enough to search for new wisdom, new life, and new love as a solution to the old or let everything dissolve into memory and then dream. Perhaps part of the reason he was in the cave was for her, an invisible call for her to find him. Just as he searched past the light to feel in his bones the original heartbeat of fear and love, entering the place where the heartbeat began, he secretly hoped that she would follow the light into the cave of his heart with freedom. He can't force her love. Sir Gordon woke up, or rather was woken up by the cold with all of this in his heart. As a cartographer, the first thing he did was note the position of the sunrise. He calculated the time was about 5:23 a.m. The sunrise was almost in the exact opposite position as the sunset, the first 180 degrees east and the latter 360 degrees west. The cave's mouth was gazing east, allowing it to have a springtime warmth during the day, keeping the air fresh. He gazed out at the beauty in order not to miss out on life in the moment for the sake of a journey that has led him to this moment like an exhale and that he intuits will lead him back to love like the follow-through of the breath. Otherwise the journey will trap him inside that cave and, as we see shortly, inside the book. With the dew shaken off of his bones, he proceeded to bring the warmth in his heart as a subtle lamp for the journey inside the cave. What took him 3 hours in the night only took him 10 minutes during the day. It's too hidden, so extraordinarily ordinary that his eyes would have passed over it during the day. It was camouflaged as the cave also had marble woven into it. The box was placed at the end of a long corridor where you had to dip your head slightly to reach the box. He brushed the dust off the lid to see the words, carved. Sir Gordon knew that this was the Nubian word for Acacia. At the next heartbeat, without letting it jump, he took a deep breath and lifted the lid. Inside was a note written on an Egyptian papyrus. He carefully blew the dust off the scroll to see the ancient coin Greek text which Sir Gordon translated for us in his diary into English. Here lies the living tomb of the wind. Its voice rests in silence here until its mouth is opened and exposed to the sunlight, able to roam freely once again and carry its seeds to plant in the garden of life. You are the sun, and you are the voice that will breathe life back into it. May the wind lead you to plant the next seed and in so doing find what you seek. May the tree of life grow in you as you search. If you wish to find the next book, simply follow these 3 degrees of the map. 1. In the alphabet beta is beta, but on the map delta is a river. The next lost book is in the place where the alphabet meets the map. 2. To start the search, the one soul has to become 2 eyes that coalesce as one vision of the now. The 2 eyes are really 2 questions that twinkle, hope and love, brothers, drawing you to realize one point, your destination on the map. You see the Adelph, but on the map it melted into Asdea. 3. To find the next book, answer this riddle: where does the drum beat and the soul dance in one hidden place both inside and outside? Gregorius Esmeraldus, librarian at the Library of Alexandria. Pause. Let's take a breath. Where do we go from here now that the final destination has been reached? It's almost as if that question is simultaneous with the discovery itself, as if to keep it alive. It's a fragile thought, both the fear and love quivering, wanting and needing to continue to know the destinies. The heart skips a beat. The breath is collapsed for a moment as it finishes its follow-through and ends at the beginning. In that moment, a thought is born, the first delicate thought of life. I desire, I want and I need the fullness of life. The thought is already overflowing and includes the other. The journey of Gregorius set on fire the journey of Sir Gordon right at the end, and also mine. I too found the lost book just like Sir Gordon, and perhaps my reader will be next. So what is Sir Gordon's fate? I suspect he had to decide rapidly at that moment, just as I too had to decide. Finding the book was really like finding a real book of life, full, overflowing with blank pages. That's why he could have just walked away at that moment with the book of blank pages, and told his own story. In some sense that's what he did. It's not that the book Acacia was a chain or too much responsibility. It's that the book itself as a whole inspired him to finish his own book. It's a decision that I'm still making at the moment. I have the discovery and translation in my hand, but I can always choose to let it go, bury it again, just as Gregorius and Sir Gordon did. The book they really found in that delicate moment was in fact outside of the cave for them. Briefly, let me describe to you what happened next to Sir Gordon before delving back into my own adventures. I apologize in advance for telling you the ending of his diary, the Book of Problems, but it is unavoidable. Sir Gordon delicately took the contents inside the marble box and brought them toward the mouth of the cave, and his own mouth next to his cartography equipment. Upon opening the papyrus book, he could see that all was written in the Nubian language with some Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew words. Etched on the cover was the word. Considering he brought with him enough paper to map a continent, he knew he had just enough to translate the whole text. He spent 3 weeks tirelessly translating the book into English while also listening deeply to translate the original sense, like listening to the sound of a flame flickering and reverberating against the dark wet cave. In a way the book was just a delicate candle in the universe of ideas. He took breaks just to go down to the stream to drink, wash, eat, relax, and watch the sunsets. There were gazelles who passed by whose soft voices rippled with concentrated, wordless life just like a river, as they too are graceful like water. He described those 3 weeks as the most peaceful of his life. Toward the end, he knew that the peace in the garden could not last. He sensed in his heart he was in danger. There were ravens flying overhead as if they were escaping some kind of war. Actually, in the silence of the night he did hear rumbles of discord kilometers away. He also knew the tension that existed in those tribes. The woman he loved was royalty, the daughter of one of the princes. The king was keeping her under strict watch, trapping her emotionally. How could she reach beyond the push and pull of thinking and listening, order and obedience, power and money to create love using the delicacy of emotion? The desire was so powerful that in those drastic circumstances all she could do was dream of the furthest limits and pray that the force is the desire would break her chains or that her lover would heed her call. The king didn't want her to get married outside of the tribe for deep-seated reasons. He was possessive of her heart, and instinctually he knew that giving her up in marriage would compromise his control and also dominance within the tribe itself. He was also quite paranoid after a lifetime of war and near war with the neighboring tribe. Instead of going to war again, Sir Gordon suspected they may want to simply sacrifice him to send a message to the outside world not to enter into their intimate affairs. The story is too sad, and you will have to read it when the Book of Problems gets published. As Sir Gordon translated Acacia, he himself began to change. Next to the river bed it was as if he was taking root and his ideas bearing fruit. He reflected, and even the outside world began to change with his change. The love rather than fear calmed down the bees. In the double change, there was something stable remaining, the soul, and he used it to create thoughts, ideas, his future, space. To build the time of eternity, he just needed perpetual movement in that space, two moving like a river as one. He waited and his lover never came. He told her at their last encounter before he left that he's going into hiding nearby and that she needed to be brave to search for him. If it's not her to fill in the space with love, that is to say with movement, creating the time of eternity, he knew he would have to leave Nubia, even the pocket of deep peace that he found and created. He would have to create the love himself, simulate the movement between two souls in love, melting the distance between the moment and the future through the passion of his search. If he finished translating and his love was still contradicted by life, he would have to and want to continue, or rather start, his mission to find the next lost book. His peaceful home can remain here in Nubia forever, but he must travel further into the unknown to find new places on the map, bridging gaps so that his peace can flow to new points. As the distances get bridged, the time can slow down, and perhaps love will spark in the friction so he can live in that slowed time, eventually for eternity, in the final destination of the map, paradise. After the third week, he woke up with the same seamless courage that lasted from the day, through the night and into the morning, like a breath that carried his intention, to live. He suspected the conflict would eventually take his life. That realization took his breath away in sadness. In a way he died to himself right there in the cave. In his final breath before he left the cave, it was clear that his intention was to love, and in fact he did love through the end, creating an invisible fuel for his new journey. He left his translation of Acacia together with the original in the black marble box. His logic that he writes in the Book of Problems is that he didn't think that the world is ready for the book. However, I think he was planning on coming back there to return to his home with his lover once day. In the pause after he finished translating, Sir Gordon had to and wanted to decide on his next steps. He wrote, "It is a period of total creativity resembling that interior space where I listened to the wind, letting it blow my desire so that I could know it. The wind moved my desire, therefore I knew that I existed and that something outside of me existed. In that space of creativity, the inner world is not totally blank like an ideal, pure reason. There are fragments, symbols inside, unknown to the conscious. It is helpful to piece these together in that same spirit of creativity, to search for a logos inside of us and possibly outside." As he decided his next steps, he wanted to have as much avenues open as possible, so he finally gave a go at translating the riddle of Gregorius. He put his own philosophy into practice by playing with the words of the riddle, seeing what he could make of it, if anything, almost like a child without care, contemplating his future in the moment, creating it and realizing it in that same moment. He writes, "The first point was straightforward to some extent. The alphabet has a logos and also a map has its own logos that is similar somehow, by analogy. There are possibly symbols on the map that resemble linguistic symbols. Would that mean that linguistic symbols are not arbitrary but have some correspondence to our sense of direction, space, and time? Or perhaps Gregorius was getting at something else entirely. Let's move to see if the second point can illuminate the first point. On the map, Adelph melts into Asdea. Adelph means brothers. There is also a place in Greece called Delphi, which the ancient Greeks thought of as the center of the world. This is certainly not Asdea though. Is Asdea the shape of a river, landmark, or constellation that will guide me to the next book? That's a good theory." His diary muses over possible interpretations. He used his pen as a key in a way to materialize possible avenues, as if using it to create the answer, and create a potential future. He looked at the materialized thoughts to see what if they fit on the map somehow. After playing for some time, he realized that the letters Asdea all correspond to numbers, alpha being 2, zeta being 6, delta being 4, epsilon being 5, iota being 9. These numbers in TUM correspond to coordinates on the map 16 degrees 45 minutes 59 seconds, and according to modern cartography, it creates a longitudinal line on the map that intersects Europe and Africa. Specifically, it intersects straight through a city called Timbuktu. If this A is the answer to the puzzle, that the second lost book of Alexandria is in Timbuktu, it would imply that the Egyptians' cartographical knowledge was more advanced than we assume, and also that the city of Timbuktu is more ancient than archaeologists say, going back before Christ. Though his intuition told him that the next book is in fact hidden in Timbuktu, technically he needed a latitude marker to confirm the exact position. Is it in the next point, number 3? After tirelessly examining the riddle, he made absolutely no progress. It is a riddle that is fresh on my mind, unsolved as I sit here and write in the Malta Library, and will be crucial for me as I begin my journey for the second lost book of the Library of Alexandria. Despite much uncertainty, Sir Gordon's love of cartography and exploration already led him to want to cross-check his theory with reality, to go to Timbuktu himself to see if he could find the second book. He left the cave behind him even before deciding if he should go to there. As his first step, he intentionally deviated his course by slowing down, getting lost in the forest one last time in the night. He just wanted to smell the rose one more time. As he put it to his nose, his mind rested there and his dreams wandered. His soul was at peace, but his heart and desires left him. You see, they wanted him to stay. The flower drew out his desires from his intimate core to the delicacy of the surface, draining his austere, unmovable strength rooted in certainty. In his weakness and vulnerability, he could have died right there again but happy. As he smelled the rose, that breath kept him awake, but he saw his memories dance like the scent effusing from the petals. He knew in that moment of forgetting himself and all things that he loved her because it was the only thing that remained. They laid on the fallen leaves, covering the floor like a mosaic blanket. They watched the moon trickle in the stream. They went in the stream to try and touch the light, but it always rascals the grip. As they laid together, she caressed his hair and his heart so that he could heal from too many wounds, caused by words thrown against his friendship and peace. Behind the beautiful memories there were memories of unexpected violence. The eyes of Gabriella drew in the moonlight in infinite reflections as she listened. I saw her soul speak, I love you. It didn't need to be said. Finally he was able to hold the moonlight in his hands by letting it go free inside of her. As he breathed in the rose, he swore, I can hear the silent music of that night, my hands against her skin creating rhythm like a drum and crafting the melody like a violin. The detail is so fine that it was like creating a person in my hands. He tried to visualize her, what she would want me to do, stay here and risk death or go to Timbuktu and come back with riches after having found the second lost book. The two directions in front of him, he couldn't decide. He wrote in Nubian as the last entry of his diary, my love, to preserve our life and our love I must go to Timbuktu to find a rare treasure. I will be back like the breath that follows through, bringing the intention. I love you. I will be back by this time next year, and I pray that this conflict will be over. The breath has three pulses, the inhale, the exhale and the follow through, which resembles a pause, where meaning is created. My words do not have meaning yet until the dawn of silence. So look toward the dawn when the season is perfectly ripe, and you will understand my message. With all my heart and soul. Gordon, July 27, 1813, the year of our Lord. He abandoned his diary, or really, planted, at the base of the flower, where they spent the night, letting go of control, waiting to see what would come of the intricate, seminal reasons, contained in his book, if love would indeed unfold on its own or rather go to waste. It was all he could do. The greatest effort of his life was to abandon everything in the moment to an unknown love. Then he vanished into the breeze like a gust of wind himself. I was able to translate the message into English thanks to the language lexicon provided by Sir Gordon, between the original Nubian and his translation. At that moment, on that very night, Sir Gordon disappeared. No one knows if he went to Timbuktu and found the second lost book of the Library of Alexandria. I have a different theory that I learned only after coming to Nubia. The local people have more knowledge passed down orally. I asked what happened during that conflict where Princess Amaros was held prisoner. The legend is that an angel appeared in the garden underneath her bedroom window during the night, and they escaped together. The angel guided her north, and after that there is no trace of her. The king was furious. He sent runners and spies to search everywhere. They're the ones who stumbled upon the book of problems left in the forest. The king, not understanding English, only read the last words of Sir Gordon in Nubian, that he fled to Timbuktu, and so the king sent his best explorers there. However, they did not find Sir Gordon or the princess. I personally suspect that Sir Gordon wrote that as a diversion and decoy. Actually, the local people were right, I believe, that she went north, not with an angel but with Sir Gordon. How did the merchants find the Book of Problems, 3 decades later? Given that the book was in English rather than in the native tongue, it was simply thrown away by the furious king, saved only by chance by the royal vizier, the head of the Nubian school system, and then given a young student, who dreamed of learning English. The Book of Problems was kept in his house safe and sound for decades until he himself encountered the English merchants and gave them the book in an exchange, so that he could go with them on the boat back to England. The student became a student himself at Oxford. No one quite realized the importance of the Book of Problems, perhaps because Sir Gordon was a simple cartographer with no grandiose airs about his personality. Also, cartography developed so much in those 3 decades that I suspect the merchants viewed it as a banal piece of cartographical history, and so left it in Malta where there was a nautical collection. That's where I enter the story. As I write, it is now an adventure in real time, not just an event of the past. I picked up the pen of Sir Gordon, so to speak, to continue his Book of Problems and find the last remaining 6 books. Chapter 2. Last year in June of 1862, the year of our Lord, I was in the Malta National Library to do research for my doctoral thesis. I enjoyed walking under the pillars to escape the heat of the blazing sun. In that ferocious heat it's even better to swim through the vast displays of the old nautical maps than in the water itself. The humid summer weather melts the musty smell of the old stone, wet limestone, mixing it with paper and ink, like another cave of Dol. I could smell the old ink. It needs to constantly flow so that wisdom stays new, so we can navigate in the stream that it creates to arrive at and write our destination. Having it in the air like a cloud, it needs to condense from the black idea onto the white paper as color, greater than what we can imagine. One thing is sure, we cannot stagnate here in the library but must use the cloud with all its turbulence to push me like the hand of the wind. Last year, I had to research the maps of the explorers how to arrive at Nubia, but I also asked the local ship captains who were experts at the Mediterranean. Today is June 22, 1863, and I am once again in this musty room as breath after my journey, the exhale pushing me already to the next adventure, but it is also the time for me to inhale and relax. The smell of the ink inspires me to contemplate the very capacity of what the human hands are able to accomplish. As I inhale, I return back to the starting point of my last journey as well as the end, and also the beginning of my new journey. Considering that we're in real time, I have to make decisions at every moment, creating my story. To be undecided is to leave the page in front of you blank while reading the books of others until their pages are just a dark swirls. The decision that I'm making now is to save the story of the beginning until later. I will publish my journey in Nubia later, nearer to when I publish Sir Gordon's Book of Problems, because in fact they overlap. It is my own Book of Problems. The beginning is silent, just like the end of breath, the follow-through. In this pause, the delicate pause of nothing, the wind of the other and your wind contradict. The creation is a gentle explosion, not out of necessity but of eternal want and need for life, just like the breath. The most important thing I want and need to say before I start my new journey to Timbuktu is that I have the first lost book of the Library of Alexandria in my hands, Acacia, saved by the great librarian Gregorius Esmeraldus and then rediscovered by Sir Gordon 1800 years later. Based on the detailed cartographical indications offered by Sir Gordon, I was able to rediscover the text myself along with his translation about 50 years later. After a long journey from Nubia back to Malta, I was able to leave the book Acacia at the National Library to be kept under strict lock and key. When I finish writing this long letter, I will leave the shores of Malta one more time to retrieve the second lost book of Alexandria, supposedly hidden by Gregorius in Timbuktu. When all of this sensitive information will be diffused and reach you, I personally hope as soon as possible in order to bring the knowledge of the wind to life again. It is a journey for the sake of living knowledge to be lived by you, not to finish in a library unread. Without further ado I present to you the first lost book of Alexandria, Acacia, and then I too must disappear into the wind like Sir Gordon did. Full excerpt from the Book of Problems by Sir Gordon. It's as if my soul has to listen in order to think. Yet when I can't find a single shred of space, I'm in a position where I have to think before listening and use that listening to create space, often forcing me to move and travel great lengths, out of my comfort zone of the moment. Finally, when a space has been created, I think that I can rest, and I do for a moment until the listening brings with it thoughts, ideas, imaginations, lights and sounds. Two things happen. First, these thoughts are another type of distraction leading me to move again to find the space. Second, the thoughts themselves have content, and I'm increasingly aware of the former and also of the things I want and need in this life, beyond the moment, sparking the desire to travel far and wide, to enter into life itself. The desire engulfs all, the entire mind and soul. It leads me to listen. It is aimed at the idea of life itself and also at the particular details. I call this desire the orixis of life, orixis, which precedes the will to live or the will to power, as it is less formed and more directed, a flame consuming itself, drawing the beautiful toward it with its beauty, and invisibly lighting the details of the world on fire with a dancing clear blue flame that resembles the glow of the eye. Orixis is infinite, and so sometimes it resembles irrationality at the peak when it can't be contained, but even then it is part of an overarching rationality, logos, which foresees in advance that it overflows and also that it is unruly at times. It is pre-love and also the follow-through looking to fill its center more. It is a black hole in the heart but colored clear blue like water and green like earth. A few times in this description of orixis of life for itself, for the other, for love beyond, we can see the logic I mentioned earlier, that the thought and listening collapse together. We listen but can't listen, so we think. With our thoughts we listen. The listening brings with it more need and want to listen more, thoughts about the listening and new thoughts leading you to act and move. Squared full excerpt from the Book of Problems by Sir Gordon. If the orixis of life is infinite, where did it come from and will it be quenched? As I listen, think, and desire the answer, not finding it, I know it will not be quenched ever but will only grow. It is the virility, the veridity and then the new life that you procreate that gets created through you, without you though you create. Sincerely yours, W. Arquette.